In this video, I'm going to explain significant digits, also known as significant figures, also known as what do you want us to round our answer to? This is a question that students often ask, and hopefully after this video or maybe the next video, you won't have to ask that again. A lot of students think that significant digits is a plot by teachers to drive you crazy. But hopefully once you understand it, you'll see that it's very logical and it makes sense. It just is essentially that every measurement you make, there is uncertainty with that. And so if you're doing a calculation with those measurements, the answer should reflect that uncertainty. We'll do a few examples and then I'll show you the rules, and hopefully it'll make sense. So note that significant figures is just for measurements, not for counting numbers. There's no uncertainty when you're counting usually. If there's 30 students in a room, there's 30 students in a room. It's not going to be 30 plus or minus something, right? We can count that exactly. So just for measurements. And the gist of it is that in a measurement, depending on the precision of the instrument used, not all the numbers are significant. So here's a good example, I think. So which of these answers would make the most sense? When did dinosaurs go extinct? 65,273 years ago or 65 million years ago? Well, we cannot be so precise to say 273 years ago, right? So all these zeros after the 65 aren't significant, right? They're not significant. They're placeholders. It's possible they went extinct 64 million and some odd years ago, or almost 66 million years ago maybe. So we just say 65 million. Okay, so in this case the 6 and the 5 are significant, but all these zeros are not significant. So we'll do a few examples, and then we'll talk about the rules, and then we'll do a few more examples. Okay, so looking at this 100.00. Now remember, this is all measurement, so there would be a unit after this, right? Centimeters or grams or something. This whatever this is, can measure to a hundredth. So the fact that there is a zero in right here in this hundredth column tells me that the device can measure to that point. So all of these digits are significant. So that would have 5 significant digits, or 5 significant figures, right? That last zero is significant. Look at this next one. This device can measure to a tenth of whatever unit this is. This would have 4 significant digits, or significant figures. So these zeros are significant, all of them. 56. This can measure to the ones column. Both of these are significant. I would have 2 sig figs, as we say. This one, well, the 0 counts because the device can measure to that 10th column. So that's 3 sig figs. Now here, there's no decimal. And so because of that, this is one of those rules we'll talk about in a second, that 0 is not significant. If we're saying 50, just 50, it could be 51 or 52 or 49 or 48, etc. Okay, only the 5 is significant here. Trailing zeros like this, if there's no decimal place, they are not significant. Here we have another 0, but it's between 2 non-zeros. It counts. So this would be 3 sig figs. Let's look at the rules. Trailing zeros are not significant unless there is a decimal point. So if we say 300, only the 3 would be significant. That would be 1 sig fig. However, if we're saying 300 and there's a decimal, let's say 300.0, that would be 4 sig figs. Because of that decimal, it tells us that, yeah, this device can measure to the 10th column, therefore 4 sig figs. In some situations, you might want to indicate that the ones column is significant, but there is no tenths column. If you need to, you could write it like that without a 0 after the decimal. That would indicate that there's 3 sig figs. Now that's kind of unusual, and if you had that, you'd probably rewrite it in scientific notation, which we'll talk about in a minute. Leading zeros are not significant. They are just placeholders. So if you have 0.02, these two are not significant, so therefore this is just 1 sig fig. Right? Just the 2 is significant. Zeros in between non-zeros are significant. Right, so if you had, let's say, 3002, okay, both of those zeros would count. That would be 4 sig figs. If you write the value in scientific notation, the number of sig figs should not change. So on the previous slide, I think I said 300 with it, and you wanted to indicate that that last 0 was actually significant, that this device can actually measure to the ones column. And you could write it this way, but it is kind of strange. It would be better to rewrite it in scientific notation. And we're going to keep sig figs the same. So if there's 3 sig figs here, I could rewrite it like that. Right? It's still worth 300. And it shows the 3 sig figs a little more clearly. So you might want to just pause and review those rules, and they'll try these other examples. So all 3 of these are significant, so that would be 3 sig figs. And we could rewrite it. If we were to rewrite it, it would be that in standard notation. Notice we have to keep the 3 sig figs there. Here, there's 2 zeros. They're trailing, but there's a decimal point, so they are significant. That would be 5 sig figs. 300, trailing zeros, but no decimal, so only the 3 is significant. Trailing zeros, but no decimal, not significant, so that would be 3 sig figs, just the 101 part. Now here, there is a decimal, which makes all of these zeros significant. So that would be 7 sig figs. Okay, and again, if you understand what we're doing here, it's because whatever device measured this is capable of measuring to that tenths column. Therefore, all of these would need to be significant. Okay, now the whole point in doing this is not so that we can have fun counting sig figs. It's because you'll be doing calculations with these, and in order to get the correct answer and know how to round the answer correctly, you do have to be able to know which digits are significant and which are not.